Well, Manny, that was kind of interesting. I know that there was a lot of information that was presented. What I would like to do, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to that certificate of analysis because a lot of questions come up of how do I know what's in my product? How do I know that the products actually offer the cannabinoids? This is an interesting. I find this very interesting in that you notice here on the COA it lists all the cannabinoids. It also lists the terpenes. Why don't you walk us through this? Because I think a lot of people, A, don't know it exists, and B, don't really know how to read them.
I'd be happy to, Mark. So again, this is the certificate of analysis. It is available upon demand. We are to where you can get it even after the fact. But when you come into shop at any dispensary, but particularly Surterra, you can always ask for a certificate of analysis. And this is what it'll look like. It'll have your summary up on the top showing all the tests have passed. And then on the left, it'll break it down in potency for all your cannabinoids from CBD all the way down to the Delta-8 discussed in the presentation and the percentages. One thing I like to point out there, as stated in your presentation, is that Delta-8 is found in very, very small quantities in the plant itself. And if you look at that COA on the screen, it actually shows that it's not detectable. So you have your LOD, your milligrams and grams, where it's minute, and then because it falls under that certain level of what they require, it's considered non-detectable. In this particular instance, this is a Flaming Cherries vape part. So then if you move over to the right, you can see the terpenes and the CBD and THC content. That is why you see the THC content at 34.5% and 40.1 at CBD, because it is a one-to-one ratio-based strain or cultivar, if you will, called Flaming Cherries, which is really great for non-euphoric effects, inflammation, stress, anxiety, pain. And that's what those terpenes towards the right dictate. Excuse me, as you see caryophyllene being number one, which is your natural analgesic, it also responds very well with our CB1 and CB2 receptors, like cannabinoids do. It's the only one known, and I will say so far, because we're still studying a lot of different effects from cannabinoids. So you can see all this in a whim before you make the purchase. You'll see the total terpene percent content towards the bottom 3.24, which is pretty average. I find that if you find above a 5 or 6%, it could be because the flower was harvested a little prematurely, or it is a live product, meaning we winterized it. We didn't use any chemicals or any adulteration to produce that product. Hence, it's live, and you'll find higher terpene content in that because it's more pure. But that's not to speak on that it's more effective or more intoxicating or more efficient. You will get more flavors, you'll get a purer product, you'll get great effects, but it's not going to be any more potent necessarily than some of the other products that are distilled or otherwise.
Yeah, and I think I want to point out that this is also a product that is it's a vape pen, but it's also CBD and THC. In other words, a lot of people perceive that vape pens only come with high concentrations of THC.
And that's what the thought is.
And you can get them with CBD.
Yeah, absolutely. You won't find much above a 1-to-1 because pure quality CBD will crystallize. So we don't want to put it in a vape and then it crystallizes and then it goes to waste. In the state of Florida, it's very difficult to take any products back unless it's defective in the sense that it could cause harm. So we want to make sure we get products that are pure, clean, that will produce the effects that you're looking for. And this is one of our 1-to-1s that's very popular in that. The Flaming Cherries is actually one of our better ones for daytime. And then we have a Super Glue that's a 1-to-1 for the afternoon and evening time as well.
That's great. I just want to go through this because we run by these COAs. And I don't think people understand these are really, really important when you're looking at addressing your particular medical condition. This is really one of the keys that's really out there.
Yeah. So, one of the hardest parts, Mark, is that a lot of people look at it, find it daunting. It's a lot of information. It's a little bit much for some of the novice user. But I do promise you, if you take the time to consider it, to look at it, let us show you how it works. It takes a few minutes. We could pull it up and print it out right there during your transaction or consultation. And the more you look at it, the more it becomes natural, the more you'll like to look at it and want to look at it, because you'll find a lot of efficacy in using that terpene chart, or like I like to say, ingredient list, to find the products that you're looking for your benefit.
And this is going to be coming up later when we have some questions on vape pens and the quality and the can you trust a vape pen. all the vape pens go through. This is actually this is a vape cartridge, so they're all going through the same testing.
Every single product that gets on our shelves has to go through those tests. Yes, sir.
Right. So I just want to point out, yes, we know vape pens from state licensed dispensaries are safe, and here's the proof of why. So I think that's really, really important. Manny, like we had a bunch of questions that came up prior to this webinar. Why don't we dive into a few of those and really get those out of the way? First question is a good one. Does THC potency affect terpenes? I think that's right up your alley, Manny.
It is. That's actually one of the questions I love to hear about. And THC doesn't necessarily affect the potency of terpenes. However, terpenes can affect the potency of THC Delta-9, especially if you're inhaling it. So for instance, myrcene is a terpene that's predominantly found in indicas or hybrid indicas, and it allows the blood-brain barrier to become more permeable to THC. Hence, THC could get into your system faster and more efficiently. Therefore, you don't necessarily need those high percentages of THC when you're dealing with indicas, very heavy in the myrcene percentage. On the opposite side, when you're dealing with sativas that have very little myrcene, those are usually predominant in limonene, alpha pinene, beta pinene. Those don't allow THC to get in so quickly. So you may want to look for higher percentages in your sativa category of products.
Right. Yeah, I think they really work together where the strain opens up the receptors, what they're depositing is the terpenes, but the THC can be very effective in really helping those terpenes do their job. Let's take the second question. How can you find products with higher CBD, and why don't some dispensaries have these? I think you do a great job at Surterra. You have a number of ratio products like 9-to-1s and 4-to-1s and things like that. But you're right, a lot of dispensaries don't cover CBD. Do you want to tackle this one, Manny?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So again, you'll find a lot of CBD vapes or distillates or concentrates at a 1-to-1 level because of the crystallization that it creates when you have pure CBD. Very hard to find in just CBD flower unless you're dealing with hemp. And by definition, that's only because of the THC percentage at 0.3%. So that's why it's difficult to find higher CBD levels. And it's not naturally high in flower unless it's adulterated or cultivated a very specific way to get that high yield of CBD, which is very difficult to do. So it's easier to produce it in tinctures, edibles, stuff like that when we do extractions and have residual CBD that we can produce other formulations. And as you described, Mark, our ratio-based product or our wellness line is very popular for that because we do have a 1-to-1 all the way up to a 19-to-1 that's formulated, which means it's very consistent. It's always going to remain the same. So if it works, we know why it works based off of those terpenes and THC content and cannabinoids. If it doesn't, then we'll also know why off of the same thing and direct you towards a better product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something that's really important to really pay attention to. One other question that's come up is, what is the difference between Delta-8 and Delta-9 THC? And I think I showed that in the molecular structure of the actual products themselves. Delta-8 is physically different in the actual structure itself, but that little bit of a difference causes it to have less potency. You can see here, you can see the structure here causes it to have less potency. It does address the same receptors, the CB1 receptors, but it doesn't have as much potency, and it really doesn't help with the inflammation as well as pain. Now, the other thing that's about Delta-8 is it's not produced in the same quantities as Delta-9. In fact, if you notice that one particular COA, it's very hard to find a lot of Delta-9 products. In fact, in order for a lot of the hemp distributors to be able to produce a Delta-8 product, they've got to use quite a bit of product to be able to produce that. So there is a difference. The difference actually manifests itself in how it worked, but it's something that it's because it's so hard to find, it's hard to reproduce. And a lot of the reproduction of it really is something that I would just be very careful. Your thoughts, Manny?
I'd completely agree. I've been trying to research on this quite a bit because of its introduction to the market, especially since it could be bought over the counter. And most of my research that I found is all leading that it takes a certain chemical reaction to create CB or Delta-8 out of CBD, and not being regulated makes it very, very dangerous of any residual product or byproduct that might be in that product. So be very cautious.
Right. And that's, again, when I was doing my Delta-8, in fact, I don't do the Delta-8 webinar anymore because I just couldn't find quality product that was out there that I could trust. And I'm not going to recommend anything that could get anybody into trouble. So, again, good questions. I do want to answer them. I want you to know and have the facts in front of you, but I just want to make sure that you're getting a product that's safe. And I don't view, I haven't found many Delta-8 products to be safe. Let's put it that way. I just stick to regular cannabis and just avoid that whole problem that's out there. Let's jump
In the
into.
state, oh, I was
Go
just going
ahead.
to say, Mark, if I may, in the state of Florida, I don't really know of any dispensary. I know Surterra doesn't carry Delta-8, particularly because it's in such low quantities and it's so volatile to get it based off of CBD. So which is why we stick to Delta-9. The therapeutics seem to be better for studies so far.
It's hard to keep it on the shelf, and you're right. It's hard to produce. So, yeah, most of the products that you see that are being sold through hemp CBD stores that are out there. Really good question that came up. What is THCP? Do you want to answer that one, Manny, or you want me to take it?
I'll let you lead on that one.
Okay. THCP is an interesting product. It was something that was found in 2019. It's when they're researching cannabinoids, they've been going down and looking at a lot of different products. It turns out that it's actually 30 times more powerful or more potent than THC, but it is found in very, very, very small quantities. It's something that really is out there. It does affect the CB1 receptors, just like THC. It also has one of the other things it also has is it's believed to have a stronger psychoactive effect. In other words, it'll get you higher. The problem is there hasn't been a lot of it produced, and there's not a lot of research that's been done on it right now because it's really in its early stages. But it is a product that's there. And again, I'm not trying. It's something that's a quality product. There's a lot of research being done on it. I don't think we know a lot about it, but I do know it has a lot of potential. And I know they've seen a lot of potential. As I pointed out, it can really potentially help with pain and inflammation. But again, I don't think it's been produced in enough quantities right now to be able to really give some, let's just say, some testimonials. Your thoughts, Manny?
Yep, that's why I wanted to let you take the lead. I haven't found too much on THCP either, except for it kind of falls under the same category of unexplored right now.
Yeah, when I got my degree in cannabis, being a cannabis practitioner, it was low sticet as one of the it's what we call a secondary cannabinoid. In it, it's been found not in a lot of quantities, and there's still a lot of research that needs to be done. But it is still effective, and it is still something we need to keep on our radar and we need to follow as we're doing as cannabis becomes, let's just say, legal here in the United States as we begin to legalize it, especially for research. This is one of the areas that they should be looking at. It has a lot of potential, and I don't want to, I'm a pro cannabis person. I don't want to overstate what it does, but I do think it's important that you do take a look at it. We do follow the science on that particular one. Next question is why do some cannabinoids aggravate cannabinoid I can't pronounce this very well.
Hypermesis?
Syndrome more than others. I think this is more, that particular syndrome is really something that's produced more in the body than by the product. Your thoughts, Manny?
I have a handful of patients that come into Pensacola that have been diagnosed with CHS or cannabinoid hypermesis syndrome. And each story is different, and there's no underlying significant cause that aligns with all 5 or 6 of them. And it's from the stories I hear, I don't want to dismiss this because I'm not a medical professional, but that there were some underlying ailments or diagnoses that were there prior. For instance, one of the gentlemen that spoke to me said that he was diabetic. And when I was doing a consultation with him and his wife, she disclosed that he had a whole bag of Oreos prior to using cannabis and then went into a shock. And because cannabis was mentioned, diabetes and all that was set aside. Cannabis was the culprit. So right. I don't know enough about it. I haven't studied it. Again, I'm not a medical professional. However, I haven't found anything that suggests that any cannabinoids particularly would trigger that syndrome any more than others.
Yeah, I know. In doing the studies on my side from the medical standpoint, it's been hard to pinpoint what is causing this. And the reason you hit the nail on the head, because in most cases, when they go to look at the patient, look at the environment they're in, look at what they did pre and post, it's not consistent. There's not a consistent pattern that's here. And in fact, in many cases, there's a case to be made that that this particular syndrome is happening outside of cannabis although cannabis may have brought it on, there's other contributing factors. So we don't have really science to understand this very well. Um, we do know it exists, but we don't know exactly what's causing it, whether it's something that's being caused in the body, in other words, a condition in the body, or something that is the cannabinoids bring out, or maybe something cannabinoids bring out in certain people's bodies. We don't know that yet. And so I don't know if we can really answer that question. I would say we just stay tuned. I don't think the cannabinoids by themselves cause this particular problem. I do think it has to do with the body chemistry and your metabolism, and it's a reaction to that. That's my gut feel that's there. So I'm going to answer it by not answering it. I guess the best way of putting it. Why does indica work better for me than hybrids and sativa? Really, this has to do with your particular body, right? Right, Manny?
100%. So when you look at indicas, hybrid, or sativas, you got to look at that as a very broad naming of categories. I like to suggest that's like saying red wine, white wine, and rosé. You still have so many different types that are within those categories. However, as I stated before, indicas are usually more dominant in myrcene, linalool, some of the sedative, more relaxing terpenes, rather than hybrids or sativas having limonene, caryophyllene, alpha pinene, beta pinene, and such. So if you're using indicas at night and it's helping you sleep, that's an obvious answer. If you're using them during the day and it benefits you, however, you're not able to function as well as you would if you were clear-minded, then come have a consultation with us wherever you're at in Florida, and we'll show you some sativas that might be beneficial in the same way as indicas, just not as much, because those indica categories are also providing spasticity, relaxation, socialism, and stuff like that without giving you that energy or uplift, which a sativa can, but you got to be cautious depending on your diagnosis because it can induce anxiety and paranoia as well.
Right. I mean, each person's body is different, and obviously, it seems like your body is reacting well to indicas. Mine certainly does. I react better to indicas than sativas. But on the other side of the coin, try them and get to know what works and what works and isn't working. Your body will tell you what works, and it's not a negative. It's just this is who you are. This is you like either you like light colored drinks, you like dark colored drinks, or maybe both. It just depends on who you are, and that's
Absolutely.
okay. How can you tell how strong cannabis is? And I think this has to do with the ratios. This is right up your alley.
Absolutely. So there's different ways. A lot of people like to look at just the THC percentage. That's just an indicator of how potent a cannabis product can be. However, you also want to look at the terpene content, whether it falls as an indica, sativa, or a hybrid, and if so, which are the dominant terpenes. And then there's other ways. You can go low, go slow, test it out. Inhalation is usually the preferred way because it's fast in and it's also fast out. So if you don't like that effect, you're probably dealing with it for about an hour to an hour and a half. Whereas if you ingest it, you're dealing with about 4 to 6 hours. Again, as Amy stated in the presentation, you can always have a high CBD product for an inverse agonist in order to remediate any effects that you might be having from high THC products.
Sure.
But going low, going slow, checking the COAs, and there are also devices out there. I wouldn't necessarily spend my money on them because some of them are gimmicks where you can actually test products at home if you so wish. But we give you those numbers up front, so there's not really a reason to spend that money for, as long as you're getting it from a dispensary.
I would say one of the best instruments to listen to is your body.
Yes,
Your
sir.
body will tell you what works and what doesn't work. For example, my wife is extremely sensitive to THC, but she reacts very well to CBD products. I tend to be intolerant of THC products, excuse me, of CBD, of THC products. But I do need CBD because I really have to reduce the inflammation in my neck, especially from the neck, from the herniated discs. So it's really a matter of listening to your body. By the word strength, that means how strong does it react? And again, every person's body is different, just like alcohol, just like coffee. Find out what works for you. But the best way to start is by looking at the COA and then listening to your body. I would say those are the best ways to go in.
Another part of that too, Mark, is if you're getting product, depending on how long you're storing it, particularly flour, the longer you store it, the less effective it's likely going to be as far as potency.
Yeah.
Which was another question I believe in the slide about CBN and flour. The reason I believe that you don't find CBN flour too much is because CBN basically is aged THC. So you would age the flower, but at the same time, when you get to that point, it also becomes very dangerous for mold and mildew to be produced. So
Right.
that's why they rather extract it, create Theragels, Losogens, or some other product where it's lasting rather than aging continuously and possibly getting mold.
Right. That's a good point. That's an excellent point, Manny. Thank you very much for that.
Mhm.
Next question is, how can I tell which products will let me stay alert and function during the day? I think this is where you have, candidly, this is where you have sativa leaning or hybrid products would probably help in that category. Your thoughts, Manny?
Yes, and then you also want to be very cautious. Again, the terpene profile is very important on this. For instance, Surterra has two products that are great for today. One is called Zen, which is a 1-to-4 ratio, 1 part CBD, 4 parts THC. So it is euphoric, but it has a lot of limonene and not a lot of pinene in it, which is great for anxiety, which also makes it great for a daytime, great for pain, stress, and inflammation. And then we also have another product called a 1-to-1 Revive. So Revive doesn't have nearly as much as THC as Zen does. However, the terpene profile is limonene and a lot of alpha pinene, so it's very energetic as
Mhm.
opposed to uplifting, meaning energetic that you need to expend energy, uplifting, which is great for depression. This puts you in a good mood. So there's products for it. However, if you're not ready to expend energy, we would advise you to stay away from the Revive and go to the Zen, because that
Right.
would be like taking an energy shot and then trying to go to sleep. It just
Sure.
doesn't work. You'll get paranoid and stressed because you're trying to rest, but your body's telling you no. So that's the difference between those. And there is great products for the daytime. Again, come in, you don't need an appointment, have that consultation with us. We'll show you the how and why and get you going on a better way of life.
Yeah, I was going to say a consultation is really going to help, and this is where just talking to somebody about it will help it quite a bit. Let's jump to the next question here. Can I buy cannabis flower with just CBN? I think you just addressed that, Manny.
Yeah, that's a hard one again, because when we cultivate it, if we want to let it age, because of the seed to sale process that we have to go through within the state, sometimes products sit longer than we want to, waiting for approval or waiting for that certification, that COA. And if we were to get it just right, and then we're waiting on that COA and it overlaps, then we got bad product that we can't sell. So it's very hard to get flower with just CBN unless you're going for a concentrate or a tincture or something like that where we've extracted it, so that way we can shelf or give it a shelf life and get that product to you.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Okay, next question. How do I determine what best suits my medical needs? I think this is where understanding the terpene profile that works for you or that addresses your condition comes into play. Your thoughts, Manny?
Yep. And then we'll sit down and have a consultation. We'll ask if you have any notes from the physician, so we can kind of see what the intent was and then guide you on the products that that intent needs. We'll go with what methods of or routes of administration you prefer. We'll advise why certain routes of administration may be better. However, we won't pressure any sales. It's all about what's going to suit your personal needs. And then, as stated before, as Amy stated and yourself, Mark, you will want to make sure you journal. If we don't have the physical journals in store to provide, because we do run out quickly, we'll give you a link where you could download it and actually take notes as well.
Yeah, and I want to point out our patient information brochure, which is on the Marijuana Aware website, also has it at page 15 and 16 has the a journaling that's in it as well. And you can get that online digitally as well as from an MMTC clinic that's really there. So I think both of those will help quite a bit. Um, and there's a good link for you to get started right there. And it's a good link for you. Um, Next question is, multiple neurologists have told me that weed is bad for epilepsy. Why do they think that? I would sure as hell like to know. Now, let me understand, when they use the word weed, that probably tells me they don't understand medical cannabis. It probably tells me that they haven't looked at it. And by the way, they should be using terms like CBD, which Charlotte's Web was famous for helping it. Sanjay Gupta has done programs on it on TV. So I think that CBD has been shown to work very well with epilepsy. Why do I think they do that? Probably because they don't know the endocannabinoid system, and probably because they haven't looked at the research. Your thoughts on that, Manny?
I would agree. I was thinking the same thing when I see the word weed. I'm thinking that they're considering off the street. They're not considering the
Right.
medical marijuana market that we're in nowadays, and the studies that have gone into it. So I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
To speak a little bit more, my son is epileptic and he uses CBD and it works phenomenally with him. Now he doesn't just use that anymore, but it does help significantly, to include some high THC products as well when needed, as described, like the THCV post-epileptic seizure, or sometimes even pre. So I don't understand it, but I would presume it's because they don't understand the medical marijuana market right now.
When you use the word weed, it probably means, like you said, looking at a street product or something like that. You go to a medical marijuana dispensary that's been licensed by the state, they have CBD products that will work for you and will address epilepsy, and have a long backlog. Not research done in the United States. We have what they call anecdotal research, meaning that people say, I used it and it works. It wasn't a study. There's just people giving their feedback. But in Spain, in Israel, in Germany, and in England, there are all studies that have been done to show how effective epilepsy is at being treated by cannabis, especially CBD. Their question: is there certification or educational programs I can enroll in to become an educator in the medical marijuana field? Manny, I can take that one. Do you want to take that one as well? I'll give my comments, but you make yours if you want.
Yeah, I would like to. I'll go after you. Absolutely.
You know, when I got involved in this, 10 years ago. Anyway, why don't you go first, Manny?
Okay, so yeah, I only got involved about maybe 4 years ago as far as the medical marijuana market here in Florida. I was retired military. However, when I came out, I found it very hard to find anything credible in order to get certified. So I went through 2 different programs, and I paid out of pocket to self-invest. And I won't mention those because there's one I do want to mention that I think is more credible, which is Florida Atlantic University. I'm really looking into that one to get started just based off of timing. But I haven't found anything, unless you have, Mark, that I'm sure you'll correct me, that's ACE accredited just yet because of the federal prohibition right now. But there are definitely programs out there that physicians, if you're looking to be in a physician's clinic as an educator, or if you wanted to be in a dispensary as an educator, and they are kind of separate, although having both is by far most beneficial.
Right. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. The number of people when the move was made to push pharma medicines, this is 60, 80 years ago, they wiped out most of the holistic educational programs. There aren't a lot of them out there today. The number of cannabis programs out there are extremely limited. When I got involved, it was 10 years ago. And when I finally decided I wanted to make a career of this, I didn't want to just, I was doing research. I'm a geek. And so I was looking at research in Europe and Israel. I contacted people in those countries, but I really wanted to put some meat to it. So I took a look at where I could find some good education. So first, let me start what I did. I have a degree from Florida Atlantic University. I actually went through that program and finished it. By the way, I just thought I'd let you know it takes at least a year and a half and probably 2.5 years for the average mortal to finish that particular class. It is not a simple program, but it is very good, very comprehensive, and it gives you a certificate in a medical cannabis practitioner and healthcare certificate, and it is very good and it is recognized. So this is from Florida Atlantic University, and it's done in conjunction with a group out west. So I found that's a good one here in Florida. I did find some for educational programs in Vermont. There is one in California that I found, but it was mainly for growing and testing. It really wasn't to be a cannabis practitioner. And I found programs, but I haven't found any that are too, let's just say, in depth. The other program that I would mention is Dr. Dustin Sulik has a program. It's called Healer. Now, Healer does sell CBD products. Dustin Sulik has been around for a long time doing research into medical cannabis, and he has a very good program where you can get a certificate from him on his particular products and his particular program. And I actually have his certificate as well. That's one of the ones I started just to kind of get my feet wet. And so those are the 2 that I would recommend taking a look at right now. I'm sure there's going to be others. I did also get a degree from the Holistic Cannabis Academy, HCA. They no longer operate, but they had a very, very good program. They were broken down and bought off and sold and put into different companies. So they kind of morphed as the industry morphed. But that also helped quite a bit. So I guess I have 3 degrees, 2 of which are recognized, and one of them that's a little bit up in the air. So that's kind of what I think. I don't see a lot. I know Vermont has some. I know there's some being done up north, like in Illinois. but I don't see a lot that's happening really. I would like to see more of these programs pop up, and I think we will in the next year and a half. Your last
I
thoughts
like
on
to,
that, Manny?
yeah, I was just going to say healer.com with Dr. Sulak. I've done that one as well.
Yeah,
He has multiple programs on there as well, in case you're not as familiar with the jargon. And
yeah,
even if you're not as familiar with the jargon, he kind of breaks it down very seventh grade like, so you can understand it. I really appreciated that. So
yeah,
absolutely hats off to that one. Thank you.
yeah. And I do want to point out, and I think we pointed up here, this is a getting started webinar we're doing next week. One of the reasons I put together this educational program was because I couldn't find any education. It's the best way of putting it. I
Mhm.
couldn't find quality education. Now I'm a Silicon Valley guy. I have a degree in computer science. I've worked in high tech for many years. When I started helping a friend of mine 10 years ago to get into find information about medical cannabis, I found it to be very difficult to find credible information. I found lots of information, but credible information was different. Things that have been vetted, tested, and that were referenced by, let's just say, to be backed up by medical science. That's the problem that I really have. That's why I started this program, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing today. And I tend to work with a few people that kind of think like that as well. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go to the next question. What products, terpenes, etc., are best for anxiety and sleep? I think we addressed that in our anxiety and sleep webinar um, that we did a couple of weeks ago. Manny, you want to mention the terpenes that fall into that category?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're looking for terpenes, best for anxiety, limonene is amazing for it, which most people may think they disagree because the limonene is found in sativas primarily, but that's when it's paired with pinene as a secondary that can be anxiety inducing. So for the daytime, our Zen product 1 to 4, which comes in a vape, a tincture as well, and Theragels are very good. If you're looking for sleep, I would recommend myrcene, linalool. If it's not dealing with pain, I would recommend our Dream product. It comes in a vape, a tincture, and Theragels as well. And then if you're looking at certain strains or cultivars, I would come in for a consultation and see what we have in stock first. I could list off a name of things, but batches do change from batch to batch. And
Yeah.
just a couple of percentage may differ, may make that difference in your expected results. So for the flower or anything like that, come see us. But otherwise, daytime, Serene 4 to 1 is amazing, non-euphoric, Soothe 1 to 1 if you have a tolerance. And then at night, our Dream 1 to 9 would be amazing.
And again, that all follows a very specific terpene profile, which is something to pay
Mhm.
attention to. Next question is great. How do we reduce the stigma of using medical marijuana? We need federal legalization, not just decriminalization. First of all, federal legalization, as well as decriminalization, will go a long way to reducing a lot of the stigma. But what I have found, at least in the last 5 years, is the amount of the stigma is going away. Now, it's not going away as fast as I'd like it to, and it's got a long way to go. I don't want to give you the impression it's gone. It isn't. It is really there. I mentioned to people I'm in the medical cannabis market. They look at me as they either think I'm Darth Vader or a stormtrooper, one of the two. But it's interesting that I think that the way you reduce the stigma is, first of all, education, letting people know what it is, and really educating the public, because we've gone through 50 years, almost 60 years of propaganda, and we got to stop that. But I think also more people that use it and have a positive experience with it really helps turn that around. I know I do seminars in the villages, and we have a large following of folks that have used medical cannabis. It's helped them quite a bit. They come back to the seminars, we talk about it, and what's fascinating is they are the ones spreading the word about how effective medical cannabis is. And I think that really helps quite a bit. There's nothing better than a good testimonial. Your thoughts on that, Manny?
I completely agree. As much as possible, I try to get on the community. Sometimes my wife jokes on me because I'm a 45-year-old guy wearing marijuana shirts everywhere in public with messages. Um, but I don't have any shame in it. I like to talk about it, and the shirts I have kind of spark discussion. And every once in a while, I end up having a little group around me, and you'll find it phenomenal that once that discussion starts, you're more than likely going to have more in common with some people around you than you think.
Yeah.
And it all just starts with a conversation. So to answer that question, for me, to break that stigma, to get the things rolling, have that conversation, talk about it. Don't be ashamed of it. It's a natural plant. It's here for us to use, and it can't hurt you.
Look, I'm a senior citizen, and I get your thing about you wearing a T-shirt around that has medical cannabis on it. Um, as a senior citizen, it's become more, you kind of either get branded as a hippie, or crazy, one of the two. But I mean, I'm known in our community now for medical cannabis. I cannot walk into the grocery store, or even around the community without getting hit with questions about medical cannabis, which, by the way, I think is great. We're getting the education out there. People are being open about it. I do see the times are changing. And like I said, there still are folks that are, look, they're apprehensive for a good reason. They've been fed propaganda for a long time. But I think when they start seeing their neighbors that are feeling better and doing better, I think it helps quite a bit. But the proof is going to be in the pudding. The more people that get healed, the more people that get their life back, the faster that's going to turn around. That's my opinion.
Absolutely.
I don't think it can be legislated. I think it has to be, how should I say, referenced. Okay, which strains and terpenes should I use for nerve pain and tendonitis? Again, this goes back to the webinar we did a couple of weeks ago. Give me the terpene profile.
Yeah, so on this particular instance, you want to look for possibly more hybrids that are dominant in caryophyllene, which is your natural analgesic, as stated before, reacts with your CB1, CB2 receptors, as well as the other receptors like cannabinoids, which is our topic tonight. I don't like to recommend specific strains, but I will recommend from our wellness line. If you're not looking for high euphoric effects, I use high for sativa, stone for stoned in the couch. Then a one-to-one soothe would be great. Possibly the one-to-one revive if you need that energy, or the 1-to-4 zen. And then we also have topicals. Our one-to-one fix balm is amazing for deep joint pain and sometimes nerve pain, depending on where that's at, particularly the feet or your peripherals, your hands, your fingers, and stuff like that, arthritis and such. So I would recommend caryophyllene, your number one terpene, and products would be 1-to-1 soothe, 1-to-1 revive, or 1-to-4 zen for the daytime, and 1-to-9 relief for the nighttime.
Perfect. And again, we did neuropathy last week. Why don't you give that profile as well?
The same thing, but the only tricky part is that neuropathy has many different names and faces depending on where you're suffering your neuropathy. Again, peripherals, if it's in the main parts of your body, if it's all over. So that would take a little bit more of a consultation, but it's typically going to be around the same thing as far as terpenes, caryophyllene, hybrids, and then depending if you want it for day or night, we would lean you a hybrid indica or a hybrid sativa.
Okay. Next question that comes up is, how do I make canna butter? That's an excellent question. I guess I could walk through that. I think the best thing to do, I'm not going to give the recipe off I'm not running a Martha Stewart show here, but I do think what we'll do is we will include in the follow-up material an article from a lady named Sherry Cannabis. Sherry Cannabis is someone who is probably one of the better chefs, I should say, and people that get into edibles. She has a recipe for canna butter, and it works very, very well. And in many cases, it's a matter of just taking time to be able to putting that together. So I'm not going to address that one per se. I'm just going to send out some information so people can take a look at her recipe for canna butter. And again, there are a number of different recipes that are out there. And I hope that answers that particular question. Now let's get into the live questions that were asked. April asked a number of questions, and thank you very much, April. We appreciate your questions. What does the research show about tolerance? Does extended use lower the efficacy similar to opioids? I think the answer is really no, but you have to be careful that more is not better. If you there's a point at which you take cannabis that it starts having the opposite effects. You got to find your therapeutic dosing level. Once you find that, you're okay. I think it's also important to point out, and maybe you can help me with this, Manny. It's also important that you not only finding your therapeutic dosing level, but also taking a holiday now and then. Every 4 to 6 weeks, I take a holiday just to make my body reset, have the endocannabinoids in my body be able to do the job they're doing, and not rely on outside sources to be able to be effective. Your thoughts on that, Manny?
100%. I do the same myself. I call them T breaks, tolerance breaks. However, I do get a multiple, great graphic there. Biphasic effect, more does not mean better. It could mean worse, just like alcohol. If you drink just the right amount, you got that buzz right where you want to be. If you go chasing it more, then you're hovering the porcelain lords. So you want to be cautious with that. However, I do get tons of patients that come in and say, hey, this was working amazing for a couple of weeks. Now it's not working no more. And why is that? Excuse me. There's a couple of factors. One, it could be a different batch. Percentages might be off. But typically it's going to be because your body acclimated to it. You've supplemented the cannabinoids that were missing, and your body is now balancing out. And now it's telling you it needs something a little bit different. And to your point, Mark, you want to listen to your body. So you would come in, you would tell us that, and we would find you another product that's similar in the terpene profile, but not exactly the same. And if you use it, you might find more benefits, comparable benefits, not usually less benefits. And now you have two products that you can seesaw between. As one becomes less efficient, you go to the other one, or if we're out of stock, and then you go back the other way if necessary. And that keeps your body guessing, because your body's very resilient. It's going to acclimate to most situations or circumstances. And we just want to tweak it up a little bit here and there.
Cool. Great. Thank you, Manny. April, another good question. I'm a sufferer of, oh boy, and I'm not even going to try to answer this one because I'm not going to get it right. Trigeminal, anyway, I'll leave that the way it is. I've been using medical marijuana exclusively. How do I find CBD products? First of all, if you want to have just pure CBD products, we do have a store called My Botanical Wellness, which specializes in CBD products that have been doctor recommended, and they have been tested. Each one of those have been tested in-house by the actual manufacturer twice and outside by a third-party manufacturer. So the quality is there. But I think in order to find them, you can find high CBD ratioed products at your medical marijuana dispensary, and I'll let you talk about that, Manny. But I think also we have a third-party source if you just want to look at CBD products by itself. Your thoughts, Manny?
Yes. However, I believe this one says CBC.
Sorry about that. You're right. CBC. You're right.
Yeah. Do you guys have that one as well?
We do not. No.
Yeah. So I neither do the dispensaries. Again, those are one of the cannabinoids that are very low in percentages in the plant itself. However, it is present. And if you're looking for that, we can actually bring up different matrices, if you will, so we can actually dial in on which products are going to have the most. But it's not going to be high percentages typically. And again, when you add heat, or depending on the route of administration you're taking, it's probably going to evaporate that. So you're probably looking in more oral, sublingual routes, and we could find that for you. Again, I wouldn't expect it to be more than probably 1%, if that, maybe 2%. But even though they're low in percentages, just like terpenes, they pack a punch. To that point, you're not necessarily always going to find what's on that chart. If you have glaucoma, it'll tell you to find some certain cannabinoid or terpene, but you also got to remember that's coming with a whole bunch of carriers that come with it that might alter that effect slightly, just like your pharmaceuticals do. You have an active ingredient, and then you have the carrier for that ingredient to make it possible to get into your system. So it's not just an isolated synthetic or otherwise cannabinoid. You're actually looking for the entourage effect that will include CBC to help you with your ailment.
Great. Good answer, Manny. And thank you very much for pointing out the CBC. Welcome to being a senior citizen and great eyesight. Thank you very much.
Sure.
April says, what should we be looking for in a THC product to ensure it's effective for my condition? Terpenes versus cannabinoids. What is really important when selecting strain for pain? I vote terpenes. Your thoughts, Manny?
I vote the same. The cannabinoids are pretty much the same depending if the time of day you're looking to use the product. So for instance, if you were looking for something for the daytime and you're dealing with extreme pain and you have slight tolerance, I would recommend a 1-to-1 with high caryophyllene, which would be your terpene, and then the 1-to-1 would be 50-50 on the CBD THC, which are your major cannabinoids. If you are looking for nighttime, I would recommend Relief 1-to-9. Higher THC, help you sleep. It also comes with caryophyllene and effective for pain as well. So you get more of that natural sleep. If you need something more with euphoric effect or more THC during the day, I would start you off probably with the Zen, see how that affects you, and then come back and we go a little further from there following your journaling or any notes you might take.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you, Manny. Okay, so Claire has asked a really good question, and this could take a bit to unwrap. You mentioned no physical addiction. However, is this definitive? What about cannabis use syndrome? I know a few folks who smoke daily, a few times a day. Is there a concern with smoking versus via flower or vaping, COPD, cancer? There's a number of questions here. So let me first of all address the first one, which is the physical addiction. If you take a look at things like heroin, opioids, caffeine, alcohol, they have physical addictions. You can actually have physical withdrawals from stopping the use of that product. That is not the case in cannabis. They have not found that to be a case. Now, in the 50s, late 50s and early 60s, they decided they're going to study. Again, we're going back to criminalize. Let's show people how bad cannabis is. They came up with this cannabis use abuse syndrome. What they did was they went out and they actually have a form that you fill out. There's 8 questions that you fill out, and if you get 12 points, you are considered to have cannabis abuse syndrome. Now, just to give you an idea, that whoever put together that form did not know the endocannabinoid system and did not know cannabis. So I view that form, which they're using to define it, as being inaccurate to start with. Let me give you an example. The first question is, do you take cannabis more than 4 times a week? Now, in my particular case, I'm using medical cannabis. I'm using medical cannabis to address herniated discs in my neck that don't go away. Whatever products I use have a 1 hour, 4 hour, the best I can get is 10 hours of relief. But if I don't do something, I will have pain, and I've got to use that product on a daily basis. Based on answering that particular question, I automatically get to 12 points, meaning that I am addicted I am abusing cannabis. I am using cannabis of my choice. Yes, I have stopped. I take my day and a half every once in a while. The option is not there to stop. It's not cannabis that's causing the problem. It's the physical injury that I got from an auto accident, and I'm managing that. I think this cannabis use syndrome really needs to be raked over the coals. I'm going to do a short video on that, because it is misleading at best. And by the way, the results come back that say that 10% of the cannabis population have cannabis use syndrome. The next lowest addiction rate is alcohol at 21%, just to give you an idea. So even by their own definition, they're showing that there's not a lot of, it's not as bad as other things that are out there. But the answer to your question is yes, there's something that where people do get mentally addicted to using cannabis. And it's not that it's physically addictive, it's mentally addictive. And there are people, I know a couple of folks that are veterans. We kind of have a running joke. They like to roll a joint and smoke it. It's therapeutic for them. You talk about using flower versus vape. I don't recommend smoking flower. And the reason for that is the minute you take that flower, that joint, you put that 500-degree temperature to that blunt, you're burning off half of the cannabinoids, almost all the terpenes, and almost all the flavonoids. You're taking the medical efficacy of that blunt down 50 to 60%. That's the bad news. Good news is it still works, but it's only working at about 40 to 50%. I recommend if you want to be able to use flower, use a dryer vaporizer where it steams it. You're not getting that burnt material in your lungs, and it's something that will give you the capability also to dial in with the temperature, the terpene ratios that you want out there. That helps to address ideas of COPD and also helps you use cannabis when you want to address things like cancer. So I'm kind of unwrapping it from the standpoint of, let's look at the science. The cannabis abuse syndrome has a lot of questionable science behind it. As a medical practitioner, I question it. But I do think that there is no addiction that I've seen, not anybody that I've seen from physical side. The mental side, there are people that really use it as a crutch because they feel better by using it. And again, I talk about my friends. We've talked about how bad it is to smoke a joint. It's just their thing, So I'm going to leave that one alone at that particular side. But I do think there are ways of getting around the burnt material that goes into your lungs, and that's where dryer vaporizers come into place. Your thoughts, Manny?
No, I would completely agree. I tell people all the time, it's not necessarily that you're getting withdrawal effects from it, it's that your ailments are coming back because your medicine's not in your system anymore. So I completely agree with that. As far as the vaping, again, the certificates of analysis, it's not black market. There is accountability and liability. However, I do want to put a quick note on the vaping. The vapes are not meant to be drawn on like you're smoking a joint or a blunt or a water pipe. They're meant to be drawn on very lightly and very slow, up to about maybe 5 seconds, because you don't want to overheat it. Not only does that melt the oil more and it plugs up your cartridge and then you get a clog, but then you're overheating anything that's in there. You might burn up the wick that's in there and get a bad flavor. Nothing's going to hurt you. And nothing's going to be definitive as the question stated, but you do want to be cautious nonetheless.
Right, right. Let's talk about the next question, which is a good question. Is it possible to create a plan according to the patient needs, meaning this particular strain for morning, evening, midday amounts? In other words, I'm having trouble figuring out which strains to try with all the ingredients I need. I have lupus, RA, chronic fatigue. I just want to replace the prescription of cannabis. The answer is absolutely. In my particular case, with the herniated discs in my neck, they're not going to go away. This isn't something that's going to disappear. I wish they would, believe me, but I've got to do something literally every 4 to 6 hours, because as the tincture drops wear off, I've got to do something to be able to provide the endocannabinoids or the phytocannabinoids to my system to be able to address the inflammation. If I keep my inflammation down, I keep my pain down. And that's really one of the keys that's really out there. So the answer is yes, there is a way. Again, that goes back to the consultation. I know that in the forums that I use, I know the dosing forms that we have in the patient information brochure addresses this. I think you do the same thing, don't you, Manny? You can come up with a plan for the day. I call it a regime. The regime covers the entire day.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why we set up a regime for them. We actually really pride ourselves on taking the time to sit down and do that consultation, recommending certain products. Again, we err on the side of caution when it comes to the strains, simply because some may be seasonal, we may be out of stock. So we'll definitely steer you towards our wellness line, get a basis of your terpene profile from that, and then recommend strains from there. Because then you could shop. We're teaching you how to shop instead of shopping for you.
Right. I think that's really, really important. The answer is yes. And so by all means, get a consultation. And by the way, I'll be more than happy to send you my regime, although my regime is really aimed more towards someone with, again, pain in the neck, literally, and in the knees. But I think it's something that does show that the morning, noon, and night. And I think the most important thing is cover the night. That's why I'm a chocoholic. I do chocolate before I go to bed. It gives me that coverage overnight that I need. If I take a tincture drop, I tend to wake up in the middle of the night, and that doesn't help me very much. So let's jump on to the next one. It says, do vape pens cause popcorn lung? I haven't seen any of that. Your thoughts on that, Manny?
I have not since the vitamin E acetate crisis, where it was black market, not dispensaries. I want to point that out.
Right.
And that was because it was being adulterated and people didn't know what they were mixing that couldn't be inhaled. Our vapes do not cause popcorn lungs. They are tested, like you mentioned, Mark, 3 times, and there is accountability. No mycotoxins, no heavy metals, no pesticides. It listed all on the COA, and we're happy to provide that to you even before your purchase, primarily preferred before your purchase.
Right. That's great. Let's jump on the next question. April brought up another question. What education do dispensaries provide to their sales personnel? As I have often found, I know much, much more about the products than the patient selling it. Why is a medicine being treated as a generic hobby? That's a good question. Now, I'm going to let you answer the dispensary education part, but I do want to point out cannabis is a new field. And in hiring folks that have, and I'm going to defend the dispensaries, they're trying to hire folks that have a good bedside manner, listen to patients, listen to patients, know how to work with the patients, and be able to provide the answers. They then train them on medical cannabis. So cannabis training takes a while. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It may take as long as a year or two to get there. I know it took me about 4 years to really feel comfortable with medical cannabis. So I'd say, April, just give them a little slack, because there are people that are trying very hard, but they have the natural skills to get there. What they need to do is they need to build their confidence and get more data. Your thoughts, Manny?
Yeah, so it's kind of a twisted question a little bit, because as stated, why is the medicine being treated as a generic hobby? It's a medicine being sold to you by salespersons. And I don't say that lightly, because we are not medical professionals, though we try to be subject matter experts in our fields. It takes, like you said, Mark, it takes a lot of learning. And at the same time, if you have that education, April, I would happily invite you in. Let's have a discussion, because we like to learn from our patients as well. So if we're not getting certain feedback, or if we're not getting certain answers, then we can't share that. And to the same respect, what may work for you may work completely different for several others. So we have to be very cautious and generic in our answers to you, because we cannot be liable as medical professionals. Now, if it's coming to the devices or the product itself and the cannabinoids and stuff like that, then yes, we may have a little room to grow. as we all do, and we're trying to get there. And I would appreciate, as you stated, Mark, to give us a little slack, share that knowledge with us, help us get better, so we can share that with others as well.
Right. I think it's an educational process for everyone. Let's put it out there. Next question. Anonymous asked a really good question. I can relate to this, Anonymous. I recently had a knee replacement and I'm having a lot of pain. What do you recommend specifically at night when the pain intensifies? I've had left and right knee replacements. I had my left one replaced once, my right one twice, due to just walking too many golf courses and playing too many sports. Best way of putting it. I found that same thing you did at night, especially trying to get to sleep, I had a lot of pain. Here's what I found out. I thought the answer was going to be just take a higher concentration of a THC product. So, for example, I would go from your Zen product, for example, a Manny from 4 to 1. I'd go to your 9 to 1, for example, your relief. And I found it really didn't make a lot of difference. What happened was one night I ran out of product. So I only had CBD left, and I started using CBD product, and guess what happened? My pain started going away. And when I went and talked to some specialists and talked to my doctors and other people, they pointed out to me, my problem was after the end of the day, my knee was getting inflamed, okay, just from standing up. Even though I was laying down now, it's inflamed. And what I found out was I went to a higher CBD ratio at night. In fact, I went to a 1 to 1. And then I actually went to a 4 to 1, 4 CBD to 1 THC, and found that worked better for the pain than the THC products. And again, it had to do with the fact that what I was managing with my knee replacement was because they cut it open and the knee was inflamed, it was causing a lot of that pain. Now, I'm not minimizing the amount of pain from having a knee operation. I mean, look, they cut off your knee and put it back together again. But I'm saying that is managed by the THC. What I really found that the critter that was causing most of my pain was coming from the inflammation, and that was especially exasperated when I did PT. Your thoughts, Manny?
Yep, that seems to be the story. And so what Anonymous can do is mitigate that by using a topical like our fixed once-per-month balm during the day.
Yeah.
So you mitigate that inflammation prior to the nighttime. Or if you forget, you could use that topical at night, as well as whatever flower or tincture or other product you want to use to help you sleep through the night. Anything with high cariophyllene would be great, or 1 to 1 soothe, or 1 to 9 relief, as you mentioned, Mark, for nighttime with more euphoric effect. But don't forget that topical. That topical is quite phenomenal.
Right. That's really there. Good. Good question that came up. Cheryl asked a good question. How do I become a cannabis practitioner? I would say that I would start by initially first thing I'd do is start by doing Dr. Sulik's course. It's a good getting started course. It kind of gets your feet wet and kind of gets you into the beginning. It does the basics. If you want to really dive down into becoming a cannabis practitioner, I would look very seriously at the FAU course. I do have to tell you, though, that is a serious course. When I started the course, there were about 50 of us in the course, and there were only 7 of us that graduated. Now, this took about a year and a half. And I guess after another year, some other folks did graduate. It is not an easy course because it is not only just cannabis, it's also medical. But they do a very good job of walking you through there and supporting you. FAU has an excellent program. If you're dedicated to it, you'll be able to get through it. But it's not something that you can just do on the side. You have to. I had to sit down. I had to dedicate literally 3 hours a day for a year and a half to be able to get that done. So it's pay some attention to do that. I think there's some other courses. I'm not really familiar with other quality courses yet. Manny, do you know of any?
There's one that started me out before healer.com, and that was the Trichome Institute.
Yeah.
That was a really good course. That really made me hungry for more, and that's when I dove into Dr. Sulak. And as you stated, I'm looking at FAU. The only reason I haven't pulled the trigger is I'm managing a dispensary, so that time
Sure.
I want to dedicate to it. I want to make sure I'm really involved and dedicated to it. But Trichome Institute was also a good one, and they have multiple classes where you don't have to break the bank to get your feet wet as well.
Yeah, I think get your feet wet initially with Trichome, with the healer. Then, if you really want to get into it, take a look at FAU. That's something to really take a look at. I know it's worked very well for me. One of the people that I work with has got a degree from the University of Virginia. That actually was a course where she had to physically go attend classes, and again, it took her almost 2 years to finish that class. I've looked at her class material, and it's good class material. I'm not sure, it's hard to say whether it's better or worse than the stuff I took, but we really walked away with about the same amount of education there. And I kind of prefer the being able to work at home with the FAU, the learn at home kind of thing. Just up to you, is what you like. So let's jump on to the next question. This is kind of a long question. It says, as far as certification or paper titles of any sort, much like both panelists, I've been doing my own research for over 10 years now. And with regards to cannabis, my forte is working with THCA. That's good. That's really good. There's not a lot of people that do. So that's good subject matter. Is there anyone that either you can suggest that where I can share some of my research within? The answer is yes. And here's what I want you to do. Send me an email to event@marijuanaaware.com. Give me your email address, and I'll put you in touch with some people that you can talk to about your research for THCA. There's a couple of folks I know that would be very interested in that, myself included, by the way. So yeah, the answer is yes. And I look forward to seeing what you've got there. That's a very interesting product, very interesting subject. But I think there are some problems with THCA, isn't there, Manny? Doesn't it crystallize very quick? Did I lose Manny? I think I lost Manny there for a minute. Anyway, the answer is yes.
No, I'm back. I'm sorry. You lost me there for a second.
About THCA, doesn't it crystallize very quickly?
THCA actually comes in a powder form. So at least ours does. It comes in a powder form, so it's very crystallized. It's almost like the synthetic Marinol, if you will, except that it's not synthetic.
Yeah, and it's a good product, by the way. It's a very, very good product. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not. You find, like you say, it's in a different form. Let's put it that way. That's what I was trying to point out. It says, April has a question. I have a high tolerance and find inhalation is the only real effective route for me. Should I be concerned with inhaling? What is the long-term risk to my lungs? April, I don't know what you're looking at with respect to inhalation. Anytime anybody talks about smoking, I talk about getting a dry herb vaporizer, because that herb, that steam will, first of all, you're getting rid of the carcinogens, you're getting rid of that burnt material, and it really helps quite a bit. I think that there is, I would vape the flower. I would not necessarily smoke the flower, because if no other reason, when you light that blunt, you're reducing, you're taking 50% of efficacy away. You're kind of throwing your money away, the best way of putting it. But I'd stick with the dry herb vaporizer, and there's some really good ones out there. If you're smoking as much as you're smoking, I would go to the top of the line. I go with the Stokes and Bickle. I use one. I think it's great. I think there's just no. It's kind of like the Mercedes-Benz of the industry, but there is no question. If this is what you're going to do and this is what you're dedicated to, I think that's kind of the way to go. Your thoughts, Manny?
I'm actually a little jelly. I didn't realize you had the Stores and Bickles. I've been looking at that one myself. But yes, I agree with that. And I would also challenge April to, if you're trying edibles, sublinguals, or otherwise, one of the tricks is have your sublingual or your edible with a small snack, like yogurt, avocado, something fatty, so it can attach and get more bioavailability. Otherwise, if you know you're about to have a big meal, such as lunch or dinner, have it just before a big meal. You might find a little bit more efficacy in that. And do it right after you smoke. So one of the things that a lot of people make a mistake on, what they don't realize, is that CBG, as we were talking about cannabinoids, kind of inhibits the effects of CBD. CBD naturally inhibits the effects of THC, and THCV actually inhibits the effects of Delta-8 THC. So the manner in which you take your product can have a significant effect on how efficient it is within your body. And that's something we can definitely discuss during your consultation, if or when you want to come up and have a conversation with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a good point. Again, vaping is, I think, the way to go. You can still take that flower and you can still use it. Again, I know, and I don't want to break the bank with Stokes and Bickle, but if you really do, and you really are going to use that product on a day-to-day basis, it's really the only way to go. It's the most cost-effective product that's out there. And Manny, if you want to have a side conversation on it, let me know. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it.
Absolutely.
I'm a huge fan. I've tried a couple of dry vaporizers, and I'm just a huge fan. We have another question. How do I make an appointment? Well, I think the question is, here's a slide to show a couple of things. If you're looking at getting a card, I recommend going to the Medical Marijuana Treatment Center Clinics of Florida. Here's the contact information, mmtcfl.com, or here's their phone number. If you need an appointment, you go to that consultation, call Surterra at the 850 number, call them, and they'll help you facilitate getting a consultation. Your thoughts, Manny?
Absolutely. You could get a semi-consultation right there over the phone with our customer care, or they'll just tell you to put in an order, or you could just come into the store, no appointment needed, and we'll happily sit down with you. You can also bring in loved ones or anybody that has influence or wants to learn with you and support you. We have a consult room for privacy, or we could go out in our waiting area where we have a couch and sit down and have a conversation as well.
Sure. And I think, listen, a consultation is important. I'm going to be doing one very shortly. It's not a matter of how long and how much you know. A good third party in getting someone else to help you address your particular issue, all you can do is learn something. You don't know it. I don't know it all, that's for sure. And if anybody can really help, I'm all ears. Anything that can help my body and my living longer and feeling better, I'm good for it. Okay, Jason has asked, this is the last question we have here. Jason has asked the question, I've been using cannabis for autoimmune disease and gastric paresis. I live with just a sliver of stomach, which causes pain and nausea. I also have anxiety. Vaping has worked for me until recently. I was diagnosed with emphysema. Oh wow! Can I still vape? I smoked cannabis for 40 years, no cigarettes. I was wondering if I could still vape by having a hard time stopping. I'm using edibles and an oral syringe in my tea, but I still have an urge to vape. Can you help me know? Can you let me know how? Thank you for your advice. Well, first of all, if you've been using vaping for a lot of years, it's kind of like Pavlov's dog. That's the devil known versus the devil unknown. Your natural tendency is to go that way, and that's okay. Having a hard time breaking a habit or breaking something that you're familiar with for a long time is really there. I have found that I make my own tinctures by taking flour, putting it into a magic butter machine, cooking it at 160 degrees for 8 hours, and it gives me a product that ends up having, with MCT oil, it has THCA, CBDA, and CBCA, but no THC, CBD, or CBC. So in other words, I've got it just before it goes over. So I have a lot of inflammation. It helps me with my inflammation, helps me with my pain, but I don't necessarily I don't get high from it. So it's something I can use during the day. So I guess the answer to your question is yes, you sure can. This, however, is something where I don't want to give you an off-the-cuff answer. I think this is a prime candidate for a consultation. Your thoughts, Manny?
I'd agree. And we would never go against doctor's orders. I would always recommend that, considering your diagnosis, speak to the physician, and you would have to make an informed decision upon yourself. That being said, I have had patients come back with the same diagnosis who said that vapes have helped them breathe better and didn't have that impact and worked as a bronchodilator to include asthma patients. Again, there's a lot of studies going on. We would never advise against physicians' orders. So we'd absolutely recommend talk to your physician. And then if you decide to make that informed decision, we can recommend some products that may be beneficial.
Yeah, I think, and sometimes even just changing the type of product that you're using. You still may want to vape, but you may want to vape a different product. That might help you as well. But again, I would recommend going to do the consultation, get somebody to help you with this, because if you're using it for 40 years, this is important. Let's find a path that helps you get your life back. That's really out there. So, Manny, we've answered a lot of questions. We've gone a long time. Your final thoughts.
Always a pleasure. I love to educate and share information. Something that really touched me, I wanted to thank April for the comments and questions she's asked. And please do decide, if you would, to come in and talk to one of us, if not in Pensacola, anywhere in the state, because I really take pride in learning. I am not the know-all. I don't have a degree. I have many certifications in self-investment, but there's so many rabbit holes out there. So I'd love to share more information and for people to share with me. I hope we were able to get some good information out there, that we were able to help some people. And I hope to be able to do this more often and help people in the future. Thank you, Marc.
Well, thank you, Manny. And listen, I want to thank you for the contribution you've made, not tonight, but also for the webinar series this quarter. On your screen, what you see here is a number of resources that can help you. Naturally, to get a card from the MMTC clinics, Surterra for the actual product itself, My Botanical Wellness is designed to look at CBD products. If you want to take a look at hemp-based CBD products, it's a place you can go for not only yourself, but also for your pets. A lot of people are looking for their fur friends to get involved to help. I use it on my pets, and it works very effectively. But you got to have the right formula, and that's what we have in this particular area. And then last but not least, go to YouTube. Our YouTube channel will help you get educated and learn more about what you're doing. And then also next week, we have the last webinar that we'll be doing over the series. It's on getting started with medical cannabis, dosing, terpenes, routes of administration, and more. We covered a lot of subjects. Manny, thank you very much. I do want to mention we had a couple of questions that came in late. I will answer them. I will answer them directly to the folks that asked the questions. Otherwise, we'll continue this for quite some time. But I do want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. And Manny, thank you very much for your contribution. I think it's something that's timely and helpful that's out there. So thanks.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Marc.
Great. I do want to thank Lee and Leah in the background, being moderators. You don't necessarily see them on the screen, but let me tell you, they're the ones who pop up the graphics and make things happen. They're really the people that make this thing there. Thank you to them. And Alyssa is the one who came up with the idea of this particular program series, and we want to thank you. I want to thank everybody for joining me. I know this is the holiday season, so please have a happy holiday. Please stay safe. I know that with the weather and all the things coming up there, it's important. But we hope that if nothing else, if we can just have one person find that information and help them get their life back, that we've been successful. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to you joining us next week for our final seminar of the series. Thank you.